now. So we are presenting today our alumni panel. We have some amazing guest speakers who are so kind to join us today. And we will present like each of you all one by one in a second, but we just want to go over some quick announcements first. So our Gator Guide applications are open now. Those close November 6th at 11:59. So please fill those out. And if you have like any questions or anything, or have anybody who may be interested or wants to reach out for more information, they're more than welcome to get in contact with any of us from the executive board. We're happy to share any information you'd like to know about that. We also have a Boo fundraiser form open. So the Gator Guide application link and the link to the Boo fundraiser can be found on the front page of our GPS website. That's just the Global Business Society website, and then you can find the Global Gator applications there and the forms too for the Boo fundraiser. Also, we have our next committee meeting for those of you who are already current Global Gator Guides. That's next Tuesday at 6:30, the usual time on the 27th from 6:30 to 7:30. So please attend that if you can. And then our next general body meeting will be the Calibri one, and that is going to be on the 5th of November, also at 6:30 during our usual GBM meeting times. And then lastly, do not forget to vote because it's important, and doesn't matter who you're voting for, we just encourage you to have your voice heard. So please don't forget to do that. And we're going to go ahead and have each one of our panelists today, if they can, introduce themselves and what they studied during undergrad and UF, and just a little bit of their involvement at GBS. So we'll just, I guess, go as the slides have your pictures if you want to go ahead and get started, Cheyenne.
Alrighty, well, hi everybody. It's so exciting to be back with the Global Business Society. It seems like just yesterday we were all back at UF, and it's kind of hard to believe that so much time has flown. I was a 2016 graduate of the Warrington College of Business. I did my major in economics. I was one of the last years actually to do economics, and also a certificate in international relations. While I was at UF, I studied abroad for a spring semester at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. Absolutely life-changing, had a wonderful time. And after I graduated, I went to work with an international consulting firm called Protiviti, which is, if you see the logo in the background, where I still am at the moment. So yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to through college and post-college. And now my partner in crime, Haley.
Yes. Hi, I'm Haley. My degree was actually, I degree hopped for a while, but I ended up ending up in linguistics. So that was my final major, and I got minors, I think, in business administration and information systems, I believe. So double minor, but both of them were through business. I ended up studying abroad with the UF in Rome program, where it's the with St. John's University, and that would have been in fall of 2014. I graduated the same year as Cheyenne. Yeah, and love GBS. I used to be the event coordinator, so coming up with all of the events and this kind of stuff for the different Global Gator Guides, which I'm sure has been a challenge, but an interesting and fun thing to try to do this year as well. I'm now, after I graduated, I actually pursued a master's degree in Germany, and it's called computational linguistics. So it's a branch of AI, and now I work at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence, and I'm working on my PhD at the moment. But yeah, that's me. Oh, and I also worked as, sorry, I somehow managed to get very involved in the business school. I worked as a student assistant, I guess is what we were, in the front office of the International Programs Office with Charles. And that's how I met Cheyenne as well.
My turn. Okay. Hi, I'm Charles. I graduated from UF in 2018, and I got my degree in political science and a minor in business. And then I also had certificates in international relations and European Union studies. And while I was at UF, I, as Haley just mentioned, worked in the study abroad office at the front desk. And I also went on the UF in London program and was a study abroad ambassador with the IPSAs, if any of you are involved with that. And Cheyenne and Haley lured me into GBS and Gator Guides, and I served as the vice president and then president of GBS. And then after graduating, I pursued my master's in in human development at Maastricht University in the Netherlands, in public policy, and I specialized in foreign policy. So that was at Maastricht University in the Netherlands in correlation with the United Nations University there. So I just blanked out. I haven't talked to humans in a long time. Yeah, following that, I got an internship with the German Marshall Fund, which is a policy think tank working on transatlantic issues. And that was based in Washington, DC. But then COVID happened and the world changed. And so now that internship ended and now I'm looking for other opportunities now. Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. Those are our panelists for today. I'll have our contact because for those of you who don't know, my name is Jeanette. I am the current Global Business Society Vice President. And then Gabby, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gabby, and if you don't know me already, I'm the president. I currently have pretty bad Wi-Fi, so I'm not going to be leading this one, but thank you again to all of our panelists. We're so excited to have you guys.
Yeah, so with that, I guess we'll just go ahead and go through some questions we have prepared for you guys, and then we'll leave some time at the end for some questions that any attendees may have. So our first question, I guess most of you kind of answered, but I guess if anybody wants to add a little bit onto their answer, it was just if you could describe your graduation like career paths so far regarding like grad school or work experience or anything else that maybe you didn't mention when you were introducing yourself. Feel free to add.
Yeah, I can jump in. So as I said earlier, once I graduated, I went into consulting specifically in internal audit and financial advisory with Protiviti. And how my career got kind of interesting is one of the first projects that I started on was a healthcare client of ours, a major public hospital here in the city of Atlanta. Didn't know anything about healthcare, thought like, oh, this is going to be a one-time project, not something I'm interested in at all, and got completely blown away by just the different hands and subjects that get involved, like whether it's from the healthcare side or the finance side. And since then, I've kind of been on a partial healthcare trajectory, I guess you could say, which has been really exciting because I've really got to explore and see how healthcare works in the United States, especially in comparison to my home country, Barbados, where I grew up. So it's definitely led me on some interesting adventures. There was 2 weeks where I spent driving around rural Indiana, visiting various hospitals. That was interesting. Saw a lot of cornfields and ate a lot of pastries, Amish pastries, I guess you could say. But overall, it's been a really eye-opening experience. Even beyond healthcare, with consulting, particularly with internal audit, you see so many different aspects of how business operates and the different departments that all come together to essentially make things work. So definitely, if you're trying to get an understanding of, okay, how does this industry operate, or how do I start a business, it's definitely a good way to get an overview of multiple different parts.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, the Indiana one was I've heard a little bit about, but that was also really cool that you got to do this as well. To snowball off of Cheyenne, so I also ended up in healthcare, crazily enough. So what I do is maybe a little left field of business itself, but it's still, I've been working with all different types of businesses in what I do. So I specifically do kind of like basic research with speech technology, but in how it ties in with, I specifically work with the different speech that goes with dementia. So can you diagnose dementia over a phone call or something like this, and then building the system off of this? But I won't go too much into the technical details of this. If anybody's interested, feel free to contact me if you're interested in computer science or programming, because that's what I ended up in. But as far as the business side of it goes, so I work with everything from the hospitals, clinics, memory clinics specifically, as well as like the research and development team at Johnson & Johnson, which is called Janssen, and how they kind of build their medical trials. So, and how they integrate and choose people for this kind of stuff. So it's how you work with all of these different people, I say would be the most relevant thing for you guys. But yeah, it's been really interesting. You have to stay really adaptable in this field, I feel like, especially when you're handling all kinds of different people. But it's crazy that we both kind of ended up doing a lot of healthcare stuff, even though it kind of is more of a businessy aspect of it too. So the way that you could say that this ties into business is we look at, when it comes to medical trials, these are really, really expensive, like millions and millions and millions of dollars of how you onboard people into medical trials. And you have to find people at the exact right stage of whatever disease trajectory they're in order to get them into medical trials. And so what we do is we try to screen out 95% of people that wouldn't fit the trial just on a 1-minute phone call. And then the 5% that's left, they get all the blood tests, the MRIs, and this kind of stuff. So it saves them millions of euros or dollars to get into these medical trials. And so that's the project that I've been working on for the last 1.5 years or so. And now we're starting a new project. Yeah, so I'll try to make it as relevant as possible. But yeah, my other point that I want to make is if anybody is considering a master's degree, if you find the right program in Germany, it's basically free to do a master's degree. So be sure to look out. Like just for comparison, it cost me like 200 to 300 euros a semester for the entire thing. So it's definitely worth looking into going international, I think, and it gives you a lot of experience. The other thing is that in Germany, most of their master's degrees no, you do not need to speak German. That is one of the things. So my entire master's degree was taught in English, and a lot of the master's degrees in Germany are. And I think even Cheyenne has looked into some international business programs with master's degrees, so she's probably very knowledgeable in this at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely something to consider if you're interested in going abroad or something like this. And I mean, Charles did it as well in the Netherlands. So yeah.
Is that my turn?
Yeah.
Cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so I decided to do my master's abroad as well. Primarily one because of cost reasons. The Netherlands is a little more expensive, but it still was, I think, $12,000 in total for my whole master's degree. So, which, I mean, compared to the US is nothing. So it's quite reasonable if you're looking for something and cost is a issue. I would definitely look into going abroad. Especially a lot of European countries are quite affordable. And so yeah, I did my master's over there, which was really cool because my program was had a lot of international students. I think there was about 120 of us in my program, and we were from, I think, 45 different countries or something like that. So it was really diverse, and it was cool because I was studying public policy, and so you could get a lot of different perspectives from how someone else would view a different policy perspective. So it was really cool. And then after that, I said I wanted to stay over in Europe. And I went and lived with my friend in Belgium for almost 3 months while I was applying for jobs. And it was really difficult just because of the visa, and all of getting a company to sponsor a visa was a bit difficult. I think it would be easier actually for business majors, but since I was trying to work in politics, it's a bit, usually like at this moment you would do internships rather than a full job, and no one really wants to sponsor a visa because it's quite expensive. And so if you're interested in working abroad, it is very possible. But yeah, so that didn't really work out. It was turning out to be quite difficult. And then I ended up finding this internship with the German Marshall Fund, which was still working on transatlantic relationships between Europe and the US. but it was based in Washington, DC. And so I took that opportunity, came back to the US, and while I was there, I was working, I kind of actually merged my business, business background with my political science background, because I was working on their strategic convening team, which was working on putting together their Brussels Forum, which is a big conference in Brussels, which brings together top policymakers from both Europe and the US. And they discuss different policy topics from nuclear deterrence to how to strengthen ties between countries, or different things like that. And so it was really interesting. I got to sit in on a lot of like high-level talks, also working on getting donors to sponsor the conference, as well as coming up with the different topics for the conference and who we're gonna have speak at the conference. And it was really high-level people. So it was really interesting to be working on that. But as I said before, then COVID happened, and obviously an international conference was not possible. So that ended. But the experience I had while I was there was awesome. And I still talk to my supervisor there all the time. So it's a really good oh, did someone? Yes, sorry. It was Maastricht University. They have a really good business school, actually. I did it in their School of Governance in partnership with the United Nations has a university there that works with Maastricht University. So I actually got a degree from both of those schools, but that was just for the specific program that I was working at. But they do have a very good business school at Maastricht University. So definitely would look it up. If any of you had exchange students in the past, we get them from there. It's one of our partner schools at UF, so with Hebner. Yeah.
You guys are doing a lot of big stuff right now. It's exciting.
Yeah.
So I guess then we'll kind of just go on with the next questions, but I guess they're all going to basically be similar. How was each of your university to work life transition? And I guess if you wanted to like any internships and stuff, maybe did that helped that? If you guys want to share.
I am happy to start with that again first. So I'll be straight up honest and say I struggled with the transition from university to work life. Particularly, like I think all those years of being in school and like knowing like this is how I achieve and get to the next level, like I was very, very comfortable with that kind of process. And work is a completely different thing. Even down to very basic things like your hours are very different. You're working from 8 to 5 with only a lunch break. You have to kind of really switch your brain entirely for that. So I'll be honest, transitioning to work can be difficult, but definitely what was great is that a lot of things I learned from programs like Global Business Society and studying abroad significantly helped that experience, like teaching me how to be flexible, how to think on your feet, funnily enough, learning how to cram. That helps a lot when you're meeting with a new client the next day. So little things that you don't realize at the time can really impart your experiences later down the road, actually have quite a significant impact. But I would say like by about 6 months in, once I got like into the new rhythm, it was really exciting because finally it was, okay, I can just like learn as much as I want rather than constantly playing catch up. And again, because of the nature of my job at consulting, where every project could be, depending on how your staff could be brand new industry, new department that you're looking at, it's always a learning experience. And that's what I love to do most of all, is just experience and learn things. So it worked out in the end, but definitely I always like to tell people, prepare for it to be difficult, but you'll get there.
Haley?
I can go next. Sorry, or we'll stay in line. Tag Garrett.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a little bit more gradual, because I started doing the master's degree, and I will say the transition immediately into doing university in the US and then doing university in Germany, the setup is completely different. So for just an example, like you can take whatever classes you want, as many classes as you want, and because you don't pay by class, you pay for, or at least for me, you paid by the semester. And because I also just showed up and enrolled in a German university. That was the other thing. I did have to apply and get in and all of this stuff, but it wasn't like I did specifically a program in Erasmus or something like this. But luckily it was an international program taught in English, so most of it was already taken care of. The process of getting the visa, Germany has a ton of paperwork, so this was one of the more difficult parts, was getting a residence, getting all of the paperwork, getting a bank account, getting there's just so many hoops that you don't even know you have to jump through until you get there. I would say this was one struggle in the beginning immediately. But then the next thing would be like I said, you don't have to sign up for classes in the beginning. You enroll 2 weeks before the exam. And then usually it's just an exam and that's your grade. So this was a bit of a major transition about how you enroll and how you do different things. There's not really, some courses have syllabuses, but some don't. So it's just a very different thing than what I was used to at UF, where, you have 4 days of panicking, trying to get your schedule set. This didn't really happen this time around. And it has some pros to it. It also has some cons, right? Because with so many options, it gets overwhelming to some point, especially if you're really interested in a lot of things. Like, I know my first semester, I took way too many courses. But, you learn to deal with it eventually. So definitely enrolling in German university was a vastly different experience, but I found it very positive. I needed to enroll in language courses and things like this, because while my program was taught in English, the rest of my life I had to handle somewhat in German, and I showed up only knowing how to say hello. Which was a struggle all on its own. So I've been slowly learning German as well. So I'd say learning language is definitely difficult, but also it's a great experience as well to get the opportunity to practice and learn another language. As far as transitioning from going from the university to working, I would say I just got really lucky. I took a course. This course turned into a research assistant position and doing something that I already wanted to do. And so I would work there 10, 12 hours a week. And then this turned into a half-time job. I wrote my thesis with them, and then I became a full-time employee, and now I'm doing my PhD. So like for me, it was a very gradual process. But I will say, transitioning from being like just an assistant to a full-time position, this was also vastly different than what I thought it was going to be. So there's just a lot of different responsibilities that I didn't know we were going to have. And like when some people leave, you have to take on their clients and still finish their projects, even if it's not your research and things like this. So there's definitely some flexibility and different things that you have to work with, especially if, the person before you leaves someone unhappy and now they get to you. And then you have to learn how to manage and deal with this kind of thing. So especially because actually, it's funnily enough, we work with Maastricht University, their clinic there. But we work with the Netherlands, we work with Spain, we work with France, we work with Sweden, tons of different cultures and languages and people that all have to kind of come together and agree. So this is something great that Global Business Society teaches you, is about things that, maybe should and should not say, or how to treat people. Like having just some base knowledge of this, I think, is fantastic if you're going to try to work in an international setting, because even just little things, it can really make or break the bond when it comes to your work life. But yeah.
Okay, my turn, I guess. I guess so. First, transitioning to grad school, it was also a huge change, not only because one, I went to the Netherlands, so it was quite a little bit of a culture shock, not too much, but I mean, it is very, very hard. Like once you don't realize the problems you're going to run into, like Haley said, till you get there. And you're trying to open a bank account, and they're like, you can't do that for this many days. And then you're trying to get a phone, but you can't have a phone till you have a bank account. And then it's just a disaster.
Yeah,
but those things help you grow, and it's great. So yeah. And then also, so I didn't have, I guess, the same class experience as Haley, because my courses for my particular program were kind of preset. Besides, you could go into your specialization. So the first half of the year, My program was a year program. I had the same amount of coursework as a 2-year master's, but it was just crammed into 1 year, which was a lot, because basically every 4 weeks I had a final exam and there was no break in between semester. It was just, okay, next course starts in 4 weeks, you have another final, I had 2 courses, so it was like 2 finals every 4 weeks, which was just intense. But if you're interested in Master's University, their business masters, I believe, are all 2 years. So it would be you would have a 8-week course instead of 4 weeks, if that's something you're interested in. And then going into work life, like Cheyenne said, you have to get used to that 9 to 5. It is very different than kind of running around town all day until you have class, or whatever you want to do, studying at whatever hour you want. It is a bit weird, and I would say like the hardest part about, at least because I would assume most of you aren't staying in Gainesville for work. So I think like one of the hardest things going into like work life is just when you move to a different place, like establishing a group. And like I was very lucky because I already had friends in DC, but it is very hard, like, because you're at your office all day, and like you're not in class, like where you can like meet people or do something. So I would say some advice was just like to put yourself out there, like go, if they have like a luncheon that you can go to or something, like go to those, like meet people, join extracurriculars, like outside, like there's like adult leagues, you can join like a kickball league for adults, and like you meet people there, and like it's like fun stuff. You can still like live like a fun life, but you have to force yourself to do that. So I'd say that's the hardest part, because I feel like in university you're kind of forced to just interact with people, so it kind of comes naturally that you just make friends and like do fun things, but like outside of that you have to like pursue it yourself. I don't know.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense, and thank you for that advice. That's like actually really good life advice. I appreciate that. But Haley, I know you kind of like touched on this a little bit, but obviously I want to hear from all of you guys. But we kind of wanted to know how your international experiences shaped your career paths. So like whether that be study abroad or like your involvement with GBS or any other like international experience you may have had during college or grad or undergrad, whatever. If you guys want to share.
Do we want to tag team it the same way again?
I like this.
Sure.
Like knowing what's happening next.
Sure, I'll go first. So I think I touched a little bit on my study abroad. So I did the spring semester at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. It's one of the main universities there. And I guess starting from the beginning. So I always knew like I wanted to do that study abroad. It had always intrigued me, but I definitely went with like very different expectations that immediately got shattered because I had been to Asia before, specifically Japan, in high school, and silly me, the rest of Asia is very similar. Got there and realized immediately, nope, Thailand is a totally different country. And immediately it was a very good and important shock on like how to be adaptable, like don't always assume things, kind of go with the flow and learn how to figure things out yourselves. But one of the key things that happened there that really shaped my experience and I guess impacted Global Business Society and you guys as a whole is one of the great things they do at Chulalongkorn is they have a buddy program where they pair you with a local student who kind of helps your introduction into Thai society and into the university. And my buddy was like fantastic. She met me at the airport, took me on the train to my apartment, got me set up, helped me like buy sheets and towels and all that jazz, helped me get my uniform because they have uniforms in Thailand. And like that whole experience, in the end, I became really close friends with not only her, but kind of like her whole group there. And I left that experience being like, I wish we had this at UF. So when I came back as president of the Global Business Society, Jason, hi, I saw you jumped in earlier.
Is Jason here? Oh my God, hi. Sorry, I'm like interrupting.
Yeah, I kind of came back, told you my experience, pitched the idea, and Global Gator Guides was born from that. So that was, I guess, like the biggest experience there. But I guess talking back to like how did it shape my career path? From that experience, I definitely knew, like, because of the way the business school is in Bangkok, especially, a lot of your professors actually work in various industries. So I know, like, my international trade professor co-taught like one semester in Thailand and then one at Stanford, and he was also in like the jewelry business on the side as well. So a lot of your professors are like actively involved in businesses, and just seeing all those different perspectives, I was like, okay, what's an industry that I could go into that would touch all these different elements, and I could just really constantly learn all the time. And so as I was exploring careers, that's when like consulting came up, and I kind of went down that road and realized, oh, I think this is what I'm looking for here. And then, so I applied to different places, but Protiviti was always like the main one I was looking at. And then ultimately it worked out. And now I've been here just going on over 4 years. So that, in a summary, that's kind of how study abroad shaped not just my career path, but also my path while I was at UF. And actually to this day, I'm still friends with all the people that I met back there. And I went back, it was 2 years ago, and surprised my buddy at her graduation. So that was fun. So.
Oh. Is this like?
Oh, is it me? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did study abroad in Rome, and I went with the UF program. And I would say for me, what study abroad shaped was probably this sense of adaptability and being able to handle yourself. So like, I think study abroad is one of these experiences in your life where you just get thrown into situations very quickly, and then you can't panic. You have to think about, okay, how do I do, like, it's never as bad as you think it is, right? Like, you just got to think your way through it, and you'll come up with solutions. If it's just asking somebody for help and learning how to do this, or if it's, learning how to take a train to a plane to a boat to a car and then another train, so or how to even just pack light and live in a backpack for a little while. Like, I think these are all just great skills that will teach you all about the world. And then you can also learn to talk to different cultures, different people, this kind of thing. So I mean, I think for me, study abroad was this situational way of depending on yourself and learning how to grow in a situation without overthinking or panicking so much. And I mean, on top of that, just Global Business Society in general, coming back and doing all these different exercises that we did, whether it be like the iceberg in the beginning, where it seems obvious that we address all of these stereotypes that we have, but then just having people from many different cultures in a room and being able to see what actually goes on beneath the surface is really just a great way to approach different cultures and situations and people, because you only have your perspective, and until you actually ask and talk to someone about theirs, you can guess, but you'll never know, right? And so I think this is a good thing that GBS actually teaches people. Whether, I know we also did like the Japan scenario, where we went in a room and you had different scenarios and you had to figure out like what was the right custom, or how would you go about this in a situation, because the things that you assume are good in your culture can be very offensive in somebody else's, and this is what causes kind of that discord. So I think just having the knowledge of how to enter a room and take in what's going on, I think this is something that study abroad in GBS teaches you a lot of. And I think that's a really great skill, especially in the workplace. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so I did as I said before, I studied abroad in my bachelor at the UF in London program. And that was the summer after freshman year. So I came back from that and I was like, oh my God, I have to get involved with everything I can international wise. And so that's when I met Cheyenne and Haley, and they made me a Gator Guide. And then, and through that program, I know you guys can't really utilize that at the moment, I guess, but hopefully soon everything will go back to normal. But I've made so many friends like from around the world, and that I still talk to on a daily basis just because of Gator Guides. And, you know, it's because I was on the opposite end, but how Cheyenne's, you know, ambassador picked her up at the airport and like built that bond. Like I did that with, they were at home and like I was, you know, their extended family. And like, even outside of, you know, Gator Guides, you know, going into your professional life, like just treating people with like that first initial respect, and like maybe you don't understand them at first, like those connections like that you can build those relationships off of are really important. I mean, I literally have a couch in like over 30 countries that I can stay on at any given moment, and like that's just because like I invested time in those relationships, you know. And then where was this conversation going? What was the question? I don't even remember.
Like, how did your internet?
You guys,
Sorry, I have the email up here.
No, she had it. Yeah, she had it. It was like, how did your international?
Oh, yes. And then building off what Haley said, also like the intercultural communication workshops that GBS does, all these things, like they really are so important. Like when I got my job, you know, I got my job in DC at the German Marshall Fund, and half of my team was working in Brussels. And so, you know, and none of them were from the US, and half of my team that was actually in the US were all European as well, or from other parts of the world. How other people work, because even though you might be working in the US, we're such a global economy now, and like you're gonna have people on your team and that you have to interact with from so many different places. So like I think like the sessions in GBS and Gator Guides and all of that stuff, and also just studying abroad and like learning that career. Yeah.
You guys like kind of keep answering the questions right before we ask them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, but it's fine. We can definitely
well.
I'm sure you guys have a lot to say. But I guess on a related note, we only have a couple more questions. But our next one was, we were going to ask, what's the most important skill or skills to develop during undergrad will carry on best into the workforce? But you know, if we're going in our usual line, Cheyenne, if you want to go ahead and start us off.
Sure. I feel like I keep saying this word, but it's so important. Adaptability, especially in the work world. You're going to be asked to change in the blink of a hat. Blink of an eye, sorry. I don't know why I said blink of a hat. Prime example I'm thinking of is last year, I was told the day before I was supposed to go out to Virginia to do an inventory count. I had done one of those before and I was going alone. And I was just like, my manager asked me, he's like, do you want to do it? I was like, sure, hand it over, I'll do it. And essentially I spent the rest of the day just cramming like what I needed to know, checking in with like different managers who had more experience in it than me. And in the end, like, even though it was only 2 days out with the client, we had a really good summary report by the end of it. They were very happy with the ultimate result. So that's a very distinctive example about being adaptable, but literally like day to day, I feel regardless of which job or like what school you go into afterwards, say like for your master's or PhD, that's going to be a key factor. Just being able to think on your feet and be flexible. So I would say that's probably the greatest skill. And then adding to that, just having confidence in yourself. You know, you've got your degree from UF, you've gone through all these experiences. You know, yes, always be humble and respect those that have more experiences, but also be confident in your own abilities. And I think like that's something, again, it took me a while to get back to, especially because work was so new and it was something that there was a lot of very different requirements and experiences that definitely were not always, how should I put it? There were like a lot of hurdles to overcome, very much in terms of learning. And so just really building up your confidence and being reassured, like, you know your stuff, you know what you're doing, and just leading with that.
Yeah, so to actually build off of that, I was reading something the other day and it's called Imposter Syndrome.
Yes.
And this is the thing,
Exactly
where
that.
you feel like you're always the least knowledged person in a room, and so you don't feel like you belong there, but you do. Like, you have the knowledge, you just have to constantly keep learning. So having the confidence to like know what you know, but also admit what you don't know, I think is just a, a great skill. Like you're saying, if you need to approach it with confidence, because as much as you feel like you don't know what you're talking about, and like I felt a lot of this way at the meetings. Like, I'd walk into like the head of research and development that's had like 3 PhDs, professor habilitated with like machine learning on all of this, and then I would have to go up and explain our system in front of them, and I would be like, I just have a degree in linguistics, like hear me out. Like, I was so afraid of saying the wrong thing, I'd get so nervous, or we'd have to demo something in front of people and things like this, and you know what, it always worked out. But you have to really build the confidence, being like, you know what, I've done my degree, I did my time, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then at some point, if you don't, you just have to say, well, you know, I'm maybe not the expert in this, so, you know, bear with me a little bit. But I think there's this degree of having the confidence, but like you're saying, staying humble about it. It is a really great skill to have, but it's also very common to feel like you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Because there's just too much, but that's why there's other people in that room. I think that's an important thing to remember. And it's fine to constantly keep learning, I think, is another thing. So I think my thing that I was going to talk about is this idea of constantly keeping learning, and don't, like, whatever your work ethic habits are in university, maintain them into your work life, because you're not just going to magically develop good work habit once you get to work. It's something that you have to hone in and work on now, and then take with you as you go. Because I've worked with many different people, and while I feel like I've always had a good work habit, you get there, and I've seen people that went from kind of sloughing off in their university time and this kind of thing, and then they get to work and they think they're going to pull it out, and they did, don't worry, like they got there, but it was hard to develop that work habit in their work life already. I think if you can develop this, just like a healthy work-life balance at the university stage, and then take this with you as you go to the university, or take this with you into your job. I mean, I think that's a very crucial skill to have as well. But yeah, it can be difficult at times, but it's you know, I think as long as you just are willing to keep learning throughout whatever you're doing, I think this is really the main goal, to continuously, because I think we said this before, it's difficult when you leave university to like develop friendships and this kind of thing, depending on your setting. It's similar. You have to just keep learning, keep kind of maintaining what you were doing at university, because these are some good habits that you build.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I didn't change the question too much for you, Charles.
No, it's okay. No, I would say, and this, you know, gonna sound repetitive, but networking is so important, and I'm just stressing it because I hated networking. Like, if someone mentioned, like, Jason would be like, you have to network, and I'd roll my eyes, you know, like I'm like, oh, like, whatever. And like, really, it's so important. Once you get out there, like, you really realize like how much a connection can change your whole life. Like, and I'll just give like a brief example. Like, I was applying after my internship at GMF, I was applying to work for the European headquarters in DC. The European Union has like an office in DC. And I asked my supervisor for a recommendation, and he was like, oh, I know that guy. And he just, without even telling me, like, sent the guy who was in charge of the internship like a direct email and said, this is Charles, CC'd me in it, and was like, he'd be great working for you. And so like, you never know. Like, didn't even think that like, why would he know some guy? I don't know. It was just really random, but he knew the guy that was running the internship program I was applying to directly. So you just never know where those doors can open. So really build those connections and build them genuine, because I've been in like, you know, rooms where you can tell the person who's just there to like make a fake, genuine, wants to get to know you, wants to know what your work is, wants to know how you got to where you are. And so like, just ask those questions. Don't be scared to go up to a supervisor to build you as the next leader to take over their position. So yeah, networking. I guess.
Awesome. Yeah, I feel like that
Mhm.
also really applies to even just us, like right now in our careers. Like a lot of us are doing like internships and stuff, and so like that's like a really important thing, especially when we are looking to get like careers and stuff. I find that a lot of like recruiters and everything are always like, yeah, like it's very important that you're genuine, like you talk to people and you ask questions and you're curious and stuff like that. So it's nice to see that it actually applies for something in the future in our career stuff. But that's kind of all the questions that we had for you guys for now. We have like about a little less than 10 minutes to open up the questions to any to the floor if any of our attendees would like to ask anything for our panelists. I see Rebecca has her hand raised if you want to go ahead and go first.
Thank you guys so much. It was really informative. I have a question for mainly Charles and Haley. I'm a senior and I'm looking at master's programs in Europe, and the application process seems a bit overwhelming. Did you use any resources at UF to help you through the process, or do you have any abroad or to get a master's in Europe?
Do you want to start first, Charles? Or I can?
You can start. It's okay.
So I will say I actually did take advantage, even though I wasn't technically a business master's. I don't know if they still offer this, but they will have someone read over your resume and help you format and tell you how to do this. I also know that I use Jason a lot. I don't know how much time he has at the moment to read, and specifically the business school on how to just look clean and professional. I will say the other thing that I actually found out on accident about my application. So this is, I don't really care if people know. So when I applied, I apparently got one accept and one reject. And my reject was that they didn't believe my resume because I was so over the top. And so I will say maybe like they didn't think I was real. They thought I was lying on. I was just excessive. Like for the US, you think I had to turn in a CV, right? And as for a CV for what I was applying for, they expected 1 page. But a CV for the US meant 5 pages minimum, right? So I had to come up with 5 pages worth of stuff that I had done in undergrad. And so when I listed everything out, they just thought that I was making some of it up. And so I will say maybe depending on where you're applying to, check into what the cultural customs are. Because like in Germany, you need to look impressive, but it should also be pretty bland. Because when you start using this really over-the-top language and this kind of stuff, then they start doubting if it's real. But thankfully, the person who checked my thing said, oh, this girl's American, this is what they do. So they knew also, based on my culture, why I submitted what I did, but I was lucky that someone knew about this because that could have been the make or break difference for my university.
Didn't you learn about that like by accident in a conversation?
Yeah, I learned about that at a conference because I ran into someone who worked at the place that had actually been the person that reviewed my, it was like just by chance. She's like, do you want to know? She's like, we thought your resume was fake. And I'm like, oh my God, are you serious?
For real, I think Haley probably had more experience than me at that point. I mean, she is a little bit over the top, for real.
Oh, Jason,
I can second that.
Oh, but we all were.
Yeah, to build off that, I also utilized Jason as a resource. Maybe don't do that. I don't know. No, do it, but don't. He has a lot of stuff and he has a baby now. So like, you know, he's busy. Yeah, also like UF just in general, like you can go as a business student to the CAT mentors and stuff, have them read your like all of that. They can read everything. At least, I don't know, I'm not a CAT mentor, but I think they can, so don't quote me on that. But
I went to someone was offering resume reviews.
Yeah. And then also like a lot of these universities, like I know it does seem like pretty daunting at first. There's so many like requirements, like you have to get the visa and do this and do that, but like just like set yourself like, I don't know, write it out like a list of like, this is what I need to do. Like it is really easy. And like also most of these schools, like I'm pretty sure all of these universities that you're looking at will have like a department that works with international students because they do want you to come because usually international students are paying a higher tuition. Like I paid, like I said, like it was like 10 or 12,000 in total for my master's, but like a European student was paying maybe 2,000, you know, for that same degree. So like they want you to be there, like they're gonna make it easy for you to come. And like, so reach out to the universities, like don't, like they are a resource, they're there, they're getting paid to like answer your questions, and like it's not gonna hurt your chances of getting in. Like if anything, it shows that you're interested in going there. So yeah, that are there to help, like Gator Guides that are there to help like connect students with opportunities. And so you can also try reaching out, like most of those students like want to help you, or like, I mean, you could message me at any hour of the day and I'm like, I don't know who you are, but I'll help you out. You know, like there's a lot of students that are the same way at those universities. So
Thank you guys.
yeah.
That's a good point. I've had a lot of people reach out to me on Facebook that I haven't known that were like, I see that you did this master's program. Can you tell me about X, Y, and Z? Like I probably get 4 or 5 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, of course.
If you guys also wanted to maybe, or if you're okay with it, you know, maybe drop like your LinkedIn or something in the chat, or like email. So if anyone wants to
sure.
go ahead and do that too. I think we maybe have time for like one more question if anybody has anything. Also, I don't know if anybody saw in the chat, but Gabby said we also have an upcoming meeting with CAT Mentors on October 29th, if anybody didn't see that or didn't know. But yeah, we have maybe time for one more question if anybody has anything they want to ask any of our panelists. We have like 3 minutes if anybody wants to ask anything. I'm also gonna go ahead and put up the QR code if you didn't get a chance to sign in. Go real quick. If you wanna go ahead and just scan that if you didn't get a chance to. There it is.
Can I ask a question really quick?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. You're all very inspiring. We all want to be you after graduation. My question is more on language learning. So obviously moving to a new country, whether it is study abroad or a master's program in this case, what are your tips to just really master that foreign language and keep that fresh when you're not speaking it, if that makes sense.
Go out onto the streets a lot.
Yeah. Push yourself
Go to
out
restaurants. No, I mean, like on a serious note, so I took Japanese for like my first year at UF, and I eventually went back during my study abroad to Thailand because I had some friends there. And I was very surprised at how much came back really quickly once I was like completely surrounded by the language. Like I would say a plus of living overseas and studying abroad is definitely like you have no choice. It's the only language you're going to hear around you, and your brain will catch up once you're like immersed in that. So I would say, frankly, the best way to learn a language is just be in that environment and like go out into the streets a lot and just listen to it. Because it's not just a matter of like learning the words, it's learning like, okay, the tonation and like what are the expressions. In the US we probably say like, oh man, like can you believe this? But like there's different formats of those kind of expressions in other languages. So just immersing yourself and going out into the street, you learn a lot of that lingo that you don't usually get in the classroom.
Yeah, this is definitely true. I would also say download something like Duolingo where you can just do it for like 5 minutes every day to try to prep yourself. I don't think this is a good way to learn a language, but it's definitely a good way to keep fresh. I would say if you want to learn a language and you need to either hear it or read it or something, find Netflix and whatever show you're watching, put the subtitles or put the language. This has taught me a lot of German actually. If you can find a course, if you can find a language buddy, but I mean, unless you're really trying to speak, like this is my problem with German. I can understand pretty well and I can write pretty well, but my pronunciation is terrible. I will say. And so that was the hardest thing for me, was just learning how to pronounce. Like I took an entire week-long course on just learning how to say things before I could really get there. And that was my first year. It was just really trying to be understood, because I could say whatever, but nobody knew what I was saying. But I mean, really, yeah, you really need to work on not just reading and listening, but production a lot. Even if you're just talking to your computer, if you're just talking to whatever. But I would say if you can find a language buddy, and I would, it's definitely possible. There's definitely language forums online and this kind of thing. This will really help you solidify and learn the language.
I don't speak another language, but I'm really bad about this. I've wanted to learn another language, and I took French at UF, and I wanted to keep learning it, but I'm horrible at practicing. It's really just practice, practice, practice. Duolingo, like 5-10 minutes a day, just to keep your brain like thinking about that topic, you know? But the best way is definitely to, I mean, obviously everyone can't do this, but just to immerse yourself into that language. Like if you know someone that speaks it, just have them speak to you in that language. I mean, like I was in between my master's and working. I lived at my friend's house in Brussels or in Belgium for 3 months. And her family was like, I was making them speak French all around me, so that I was like starting to like pick up on what they were saying. And you really do like pick up things like that. And I sadly didn't learn Dutch while I was in the Netherlands, but that's because everyone there speaks English, and no one really is offended if you're not speaking Dutch. But I feel like Haley had to, you know, probably force herself to learn German, because they're quite insistent on the German.
Well,
at least
bad you are. If
understanding
you're
it more.
bad enough, then
Yeah.
they just don't want to hear you.
Yeah. But yeah, just to practice. And the TV thing's also great. I love, like, there's really great foreign films too. So like, don't be scared to like go watch movies that are like in a foreign language, because honestly, they're like 98% of the time they're better than like American made films. So
And music.
Yes,
Mhm.
music too.
Find anything you want to hear in that language will really help.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys. Let me go sharing this. But thank you guys again so much for taking the time to talk with us and answer some questions and share your contact information with all of us. We really appreciate seeing some familiar, friendly faces. And hopefully, you know, we'll be getting in contact with you guys again soon for other collaborations and stuff. And you're always more than welcome to join us for our GBM meetings and stuff. So please show yourself around again.
Sounds
Awesome.
great.
I'd love
Thank
that.
you again. Thanks to everyone for coming to our GBM today. Really